In the alternate universe featured in the Fox science fiction series Fringe, we are shown that President John F. Kennedy was never assassinated and survives to the present day. In the last episode, we explored the possible avenues which the Soviet Union could have pursued socioeconomically in order to survive into the 21st century. Today, I ask Andrew Potts, William Fernandez, and Mike Stevenson how they think JFK would have handled Vietnam.
A lot of people don't tend to forget John F. Kennedy was president when we went to Vietnam.
Vietnam could have looked different with JFK, but you have to remember JFK was an intense anti-communist from the beginning, or early his days in Congress. So ideologically he was absolutely opposed to communism, and I probably would have rather seen Vietnam under JFK than LBJ.
Well, see, this is a point of I think great controversy, because there are people who really are fascinated with and still love and admire John F. Kennedy, who believe that if he had stayed in the White House, he was going to pull us out of Vietnam. But then there's another school of thought that he actually deepened our role in Vietnam by sending in more advisors. And Kennedy was known to enjoy a good covert op. I mean, he created the Green Berets, and there were CIA black ops occurring all in Southeast Asia. So I kind of tend to fall on the side of the people who think he was not lessening our involvement in Vietnam. Now, the strategic Hamlet policy, flexible response, the strategic Hamlet's idea, that's part of where you hear the expression winning people's hearts and minds. That was a failed policy, and it was failing on a grand scale already. So if he continued on with that policy in Vietnam, he would have found it just as much a quagmire as LBJ did after him.
The issue that got us into Vietnam, which is highly debated on whether or not it actually happened or what the original report was true, was the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where apparently North Vietnamese attacked American ships, and that's what propelled us into the Vietnam War. Now, I think if Kennedy was president, he probably would have done a lot more to probably get it done sooner.
I think Kennedy would have been more focused on Vietnam militarily. I think he might have applied more military pressure early. Remember, Kennedy was a veteran himself, right? World War II veteran. And so I think he would have applied more heat militarily early, and I think they could have settled it earlier than it being a long, drawn-out process that it was.
This is why I say when people are always arguing, did the U.S. lose Vietnam? I'm going to say, no, they didn't, and here's my reason why. It wasn't a loss of a war. It was more of a political battle that we lost. The nation almost got divided over whether or not we want to keep doing this. Now, if the U.S. military had actually not listened to some of these people protesting and gave them the full capacity that we could have wiped out the whole nation. But the thing is, we have a lot of people in there, do we want to leave room for conscience, or do we want to destroy everything?
The Cold War fear of the domino effect, I think probably would have been just the same. And we have to remember, too, he ran for president in 1960 as a Cold War crusader, blaming the Republicans for the missile gap and being soft on communism. So it would have been hard for him to do much else. Again, I've always believed that the failure of the Bay of Pigs invasion and the failure to stop the creation of the Berlin Wall left him in a weakened position. And negotiating a step out of Vietnam and a step away from being strong against communism would have been really hard for him to do if he wanted to ever get elected president, which in this scenario, he may very well have and serve 2 terms, and then history sweeps forward from there.
May have led to the fall of communism happening sooner, especially in mostly Asia.
But one has to wonder, in the midst of the Vietnam War, how would Kennedy have handled the Civil Rights Acts?
After the Civil War, Reconstruction was horrible to the southeastern U.S., which really what spawned the racism as horrible as it is today.
I almost believe that the passage of the Civil Rights Act, starting in 1964 and then through to 1968, happened partly because Kennedy was assassinated. I'm not saying that his death aided the cause necessarily, but being a Catholic Yankee Democrat made Southern Democrats in his own party very resistant to federally enforced segregation and civil rights. that I think it almost took a Southern Democrat good old boy to whip the other good old boys into shape to support a Civil Rights Act.
I do think his assassination expedited the process, but nationally things were unraveling pretty quickly as well, with the LA riots taking place, and just around as the civil rights movement was becoming more and more militant, and riots were breaking out. I think Congress, not to mention Bull Connor and guys like that, being put on television, right, put in America's living rooms. So they see some of the laws that people had supported, how bad they look when they actually play out. So I think the Civil Rights Acts would have come. I don't know that it would have come in 64, 65, but maybe a little bit later, maybe a few years later.
He was fighting an uphill battle even before he was assassinated. With the support of Dr. King and nonviolent protest, I could give it a definite maybe.